conservative, constitutional. It's the Andrew Cooperrider Show, keeping you informed on what's going on right here in Kentucky.
And welcome, everybody, to another amazing day right here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Of course, I'm your wonderful host, Andrew Cooperrider. And today's show, I know a lot of people, including myself, when I was interviewing Mike Harmon, former state auditor. If you missed it, you can listen to it right there on the podcasting platforms. Head over to theandrewshow.com. Hit the Listen Now tab. See all the different places you can listen to that. If you missed it, if you're listening to this on social media or on a podcasting platform, just go back, look at the last episode I put out, and you'll be able to find that. But we touched on this driver's licensing scandal. I'm sure you've heard a lot of people talk about it. I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to go through the original WDRB story about it and kind of fill in a little bit of background / give some commentary here as we attempt to understand exactly what's going on with this illegal immigrant driver's license scandal, where essentially what's alleged is that driver's license workers for the state were taking $200 bribes, allegedly, to give driver's licenses to illegal immigrants. So we'll have that, but then we also have a few other stories I would love to go ahead and dig into, of course. A lot of important things going on. One I want to dig into is the elections getting a little hot and bothered there with the Senate this week. If we have time, we'll go ahead and address that. Also, we have interesting announcements coming out of the Beshear administration regarding Ford battery plants. Posted this past week about the $11 million contract being extended to offer COVID testing from the state. What is up with that? Why is that going on? So we will be digging into that as well. And if we have time, we probably won't have time for this one, but Fayette County Schools apparently doesn't know how much money it has. So yay for them. Real winners over there. They're really picking some great times to decide to just not know how much money they have at a given time. While they're trying to raise taxes, get in trouble for that, saying they have a budget shortfall. Now the budget shortfall is even more because they actually didn't have as much money going into this as they thought they did. So therefore, they don't know. They just don't know. They thought they'd have money and then they wouldn't. Like, the budget shortfall went from like 14 million to now like 22, 24 million is what they're projecting that they have to fix, somewhere around there. That's like double. How far off do you have to double? Who's running the show? So anyways, we'll read that story to you. I basically covered it and how ridiculous and stupid it is just now. I mean, this school, you're being audited by the auditor. The public hates you right now. Part of the reason why the public hates them is over this tax increase. That then brings in scrutiny. And then you find out all these other things they're doing that, meanwhile, striking while the iron's hot. I'll give them that. Let's really drive the point home and make sure as much of the Fayette County, the Lexington, Kentucky public hates us. In fact, the whole state. Let's make sure they hate us as much as possible. We're now going to go into eminent domain, of course, of something I've talked about on the social medias. Don't know if I've talked about on the show yet, but they bought this property at the corner of Versailles and Mason Headley from the Webb family. Let's just put to the side for a second that for years and years and years and years, the Webb family was paying taxes on, I believe, that property being valued at about $2 to $3 million-ish. Was what they're paying property taxes on, and what it was valued at when Fayette County Schools bought it was $12.5 million. That's a pretty significant difference between what they were paying taxes on and what the property was actually worth. I believe the Herald Leader looked at that, found out that they hadn't had a reassessment of value in years, something that, of course, the normal everyday citizens don't have the opportunity to have. They're getting their property assessed as often as they possibly can. But anyway, so they bought this property, spent $10 million, gave them a $2.5 million tax credit to use to buy this property to build a school, a STEM school for girls there. And in all this process of buying this property, and it's acres of property, there's a lot of space on it. Apparently, they never figured out like how to get buses in and out of the property. So now they want to use eminent domain to take people's backs and front yards from them and run buses feet away from their house in order to have enough space for it. And what's really confusing is you look at the drives, and honestly, I asked this question. A lot of people asking this question. There wasn't a lot of understanding. Nobody is understanding why they have to go into people's yards, because both drives that currently exist to go into the property runs up one side of the property line, and then another side runs up the other. The other one runs up the other side of the property line. So you can, if you need to expand those roads, you have like acres of land that way that you can expand into. Why are you deciding to go this way and take people's backyards? That's the other thing that's like really strange. And now story comes out. Herald Leader covers it. I wasn't planning on covering this first, but here I am covering it first. It's just so frustrating. And they're like, maybe the budget shortfall is a little bit more. It's a little bit more. And by a little bit more, we mean almost double what we said it was going to be. Because, we just aren't good with money. Let's just call a spade a spade. We're not very good with money. We spend tens of thousands of dollars on ice cream while we're firing art teachers. And yeah, sure, we buy up all these properties when we really haven't had a huge amount of student body increase. I mean, this school year, they have 2 new schools they're opening. You have the Hub for Innovative Learning, the Hill Center or whatever, that they took over the old Herald Leader building downtown. And then you also have a new middle school out in, towards the edge of the urban service boundary there that they're opening up. And now they've got this other school they're building at the corner of Mason Headley and Versailles. It's just a mess. It's just a mess. I'm sorry. But what is going on there? Like, at some point, you're like, just stop. Just stop screwing up, please. I feel that way about all of our schools. I'm sure you guys do, too. I mean, here's another school. Woodford County is having to put payroll on a credit card. Literally, Woodford County Schools having to put payroll on a credit card. Jefferson County Public Schools wanting to raise the taxes. I mean, what's going on here is that they're all too stupid to realize COVID money was going to go away eventually. And the minute it started flowing in, they incorporated it into their budgets. At least it was as if it was going to be there forever. And that was their new budget. And now it's not, because that money is getting clawed back, and they planned on that money. And now they don't know what to do but to tax us more, because they don't know how to go back to spending at the levels they did before COVID. They got this influx of money. It's like government spending and government budgets. They're like water. They will expand to fit whatever container you put them in. They're always going to be asking you for more money, and it'll never be enough. And then and if you grant them money temporarily for something, they will not know how to live without it. It's like impossible for them to figure it out. And it's just so ridiculous. And these people are educating our children, and this is what we get. This is what we have. And it's just so disheartening. And on that subject, we've got an attack going on, too, on homeschooling. I haven't had a chance to talk about. I'm going to talk about that when we come back. And then I'll talk about the driver's licensing scam. Then if I have time, I'll talk about the Senate. Then if I have time, I'll talk about some other stories. I ended up getting sidetracked with schools. This wasn't in my plan. I'm looking at my notes right now. There's nothing in there about schools, but I'm just so sick of this. I'm sure you are too. So we'll have that when we get back here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. We'll see you back here in a few short minutes. And you're back here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Before the break, my show plan went a little off rails as I just started really complaining over how bad the public schools systems have been as far as managing money, of course, getting results. They all suck. I mean, Fayette County, not all, there's a few good districts, but take Fayette County Schools, Louisville Public Schools if you're looking at 10th, 11th grade, whichever grade it is, they take this proficiency test for science. I think it's 11th grade. They take a proficiency test in science. Both schools are not cracking over 10% of kids being proficient in science when they graduate high school. 10%. And when you compare that to statistics on the sexual misconducts by teachers in schools, it means that if your kid's in Fayette County Public Schools, your kid's in Jefferson County Public Schools, your child's more likely to receive to be the victim of a sexually inappropriate interaction of some sort from a teacher than they are to graduate proficient in science. And yet, you have people attacking homeschoolers because that's the thing holding back society, of course. That's the problem. We don't have enough guardrails up for homeschoolers. You know, homeschoolers known for being complete idiots that don't know anything. I mean, of course, that's absolutely the opposite. I mean, anecdotally, most of us would know that's not true. And if you know homeschoolers that you say, well, that's not the case, I think they're really dumb. I'm sorry, you just don't know enough homeschoolers. I've not, the vast swaths of homeschoolers I've ever met have kids that are very intelligent and they're socially fine. I mean, people claim all the time, well, I'd rather homeschool my kids, but I want them to have the social interaction of public school. What social interaction? To get the victim of sexual misconduct by a teacher? Being taught about different pronouns? Having to learn about what bathrooms people are allowed to use. What does it mean to identify? What is a gay relationship? What's social skills again, right? Anyways, and for you who take your kids to public schools, I understand you may have no other options, and I get you. I hear you. I'm not attacking you. I'm just saying don't attack homeschoolers, but yet Judge Executive for Harlan County, Dan Mosley, decided that was his new problem. Okay, this was a post he made on Facebook that I took a lot of issues with, and this is what he had to say. He said, I've been extremely bothered for a few years by something. I've tried to work on policy solutions concerning this behind the scenes and will continue to do so despite efforts in the past few years that have not been successful. However, it's time to say what I need to say. Now, I want to start off just understanding what he's talking about here. He is talking about putting in place legislation to crack down on the ability to homeschool kids. And that's important because the defenders of this kind of garbage, at least on my social media, were sitting there trying to claim that Dan Mosley, what he was talking about, was not the good homeschoolers, but just the bad homeschoolers. However, the problem with that claim is when you pass a law on homeschooling, you affect everybody. Not just the good, or if you make it harder to homeschool, it becomes harder on the good and the bad. And so as I go through this, when you hear people say, well, he was just calling out bad homeschoolers, he was calling out good yeah, but he's advocating for laws that affect everyone. So don't feed me that line of garbage. Anyways, this is what he had to say. He said, continuing now, the 25-26 school year starts this week, and at the end of the last school year, approximately 600 students were classified as being homeschooled in the Harlan County School District. Let me be clear. There are some very capable parents out there who are providing legitimate education for their children in a home environment. I know several of you who do this and have absolutely no issue with those who are providing a world-class education for your children in a home environment. I applaud you and respect you for taking on a difficult task and doing this the right way for your kids. Sadly, this isn't the case for the overwhelming majority of these 600 students. Parents that are not doing it the right way are covering up things going on in the home, abuse, neglect, drug use, drug trafficking, etc., but not providing any kind of educational curriculum for the kids. What Dan Mosley just claimed, which, by the way, you can go read his post yourself, nowhere in here does he claim any source at all for that huge claim. He just said the majority of these students, he's saying that over 300 of the homeschooled out of the 600 students, the overwhelming majority, overwhelming too doesn't imply just 51%. He's talking like 75%. He's saying out of the 600 homeschooled kids, he believes only maybe 100 to 200 of them are actually doing it whatever Dan Mosley considers the right way. I mean, forget the fact that less than half his kids are graduating high school proficient in reading and math out of the public schools, I guess that's not a problem there for old Danny M., old Judge Mosley. That's not a problem for him. What's a problem for him is that he's cooked up a stat of 400 to 500 homeschool kids with no evidence. He has nothing to prove this other than his feelings. This isn't how you make policy. This isn't how you make decisions. You don't make them off of feelings. If there's a difference between Democrats and Republicans, and Dan Mosley claims to be a Republican, though he used to be a Democrat. Anyways, in my mind, that's always been the main difference between Democrats and Republicans. Not main, but one of the differences. Democrats legislate from their feelings. Republicans legislate from facts, figures, and stats. At least they're supposed to. But Dan Mosley here is going with feelings and then making a broad statement claiming that the overwhelming majority of the kids being homeschooled are doing so because they don't want to be held accountable for something like truancy or drug use or something like that. Never mind the fact, what's he even talking about here? He's talking about, well, I've been looking for a legislative fix for this. Dan, if you know there's so many kids, do you not know there's laws on the books already that exist about educational neglect? Laws that apparently you're not enforcing? Laws that apparently your sheriff isn't enforcing? Because this wouldn't be going on if they were, if it's such a big problem. And I think it's hilarious. He talks about passing a new law that they're going to enforce. You can't even enforce the laws you have. He then goes on to talk about kids and, you don't even go ahead and read the rest of it if you want. It doesn't matter. He literally goes on talking about, these kids, they're being so mistreated. And are there kids out there in horrible situations? Absolutely, 100% I'm sure there are. And we have laws on the books to deal with that. I'm not saying leave them be. I'm saying use the laws you have and stop trying to make it harder on the homeschoolers to exist. And Dan, stop having such a poor view of people who homeschool. Apparently, Dan believes, if you live in Harlan County, this is what Dan believes about you. If you walk up to Dan and say you're a homeschool parent, he believes you're not doing a good job. Period. Now you could say, no, he said there's some good. Yeah, there's some good, but he said the overwhelming majority. So when you come up and say it, he's going to assume you're doing a bad job because he believes the overwhelming majority. That was his words. His words. Then, speaking of his words, speaking of homeschooling kids and all this other garbage that he's cooking up on top of his own schools being bad, I mean, I don't think it was his district, but let's not forget that a year or two ago, an Eastern Kentucky school district got in trouble because their high school boys were cross-dressing and giving lap dances to the male principal in front of the entire student body. Yeah, that really happened. But also, I want to say something to people like Dan, okay? That think it's hard to homeschool. People who think it's difficult to homeschool. Because I hear this all the time. I see this all the time. Well, you've got parents homeschooling that don't have a degree in education. You got parents homeschooling that don't, they didn't go to college, or what are they doing, or blah, blah, blah. Listen. There is no special talent that every human doesn't have the capability to have, outside perhaps patience with a child. There's no skill. You don't need special training to be able to educate one or two or three of your own children. First, if they're not paying attention, you have additional items and abilities of discipline at your fingertips that teachers don't have in a school room. So that kind of helps you out a little bit. You don't need as much training on dealing with bad behavior because you're the parent. You have more options available to you, okay? The other thing is, it doesn't take any special particular skill or training outside of, as I said, making sure you have patience with your children as they're learning to be able to teach a child or two or a couple. Now, I will say it takes some special training and probably some schooling. I believe it would to be able to teach 20 or so children at a time. You see what I'm saying here? I understand that teachers should get special training, and I think they probably should. They don't have as much tools available to them, as I just said, but also they're teaching 20 kids that aren't theirs at the same time. Of course, that takes special skill and ability. But for one person to teach their kid how to read and do basic math, no, it doesn't take special ability. And by the time they get into advanced classes, there's all kinds of curriculums out there available to them that teach them for you, where you just need to make sure they're doing their work and they get great results. Homeschoolers graduate doing so much better, scoring so much higher on the ACTs and SATs. Colleges prefer them. They're self-starters. They have better educational outcomes. They're better prepared for colleges by and whole. So while Dan Mosley cooks up this belief he's got regarding homeschoolers that is detached from any facts, figures, or reality, the real facts and figures on homeschoolers paints a completely different story. That Dan Mosley should be excited to have at least 600. He should be pushing for more homeschoolers, because until the results from homeschooling are worse than the results from public schooling, that's clearly the better option. All right, we'll be back in a few short minutes. We'll be digging into, the this driver's license scandal. We'll be digging into this alleged bribery scheme. We'll cover that story after this short break. And welcome, everybody, to another amazing segment here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. So in this segment, we're talking about the driver's license scandal. I'm sure you've heard a lot, seen a lot. People talked about it. Essentially, what was going on is some workers at various driver's license offices are alleged to be handing out driver's licenses to illegal immigrants for $200 bribes. And a whistleblower has come forward to talk about it. Now, this story originally was broke by WDRB. I want to go through this story and offer some commentary on the original story, fill in some background knowledge, but also at the same time, just point out some things. So let's go ahead and take a listen to this story as it starts off.
This out. Fraud inside Kentucky's transportation cabinet. Licenses issued without a driver's test.
It is an ongoing WDRB investigation, and tonight we hear from a whistleblower who says coworkers used her login to pull.
So right there, just pause for a second. So you just heard them say it's been a part of an ongoing WDRB investigation. So WDRB caught wind of these notices being sent out to just over 1,500 people saying that they need to turn in their driver's licenses. Their driver's licenses were invalid. There was something wrong with their paperwork, something up. And so WDRB was investigating that, and they didn't expect it to turn into, per se, an illegal immigrant scandal. Later on, we'll find out that they actually asked Bashir about this as we go into what did Bashir know. It is interesting. I want you to pay attention here to how WDRB handles the whole illegal immigrant thing for a second. Take a listen.
Off this scheme.
The employees were being paid underneath the table.
They say sometimes
I immediately let my supervisor know about it.
truth hurts.
Did you ever think that this would cost you your job?
No,
And for Melissa Moorman,
I was angry for a long time.
this is one of those.
It hurts me that I'm talking about this and I actually like where I was working at.
Times.
I came into the office that day, my computer was shut down. I was told to go to the front door. Detectives came in, they interviewed me. That was it.
Moorman says she was fired 3 months after she sent this letter.
So I want to pause there real quick and read to you the letter she sent. So she sent this letter back on 10/29/24. Okay, so this is important for you to know about this letter as we talk about, because as we talk about what's Bashir's role in all this, I think that's an important discussion to have. So here's what the letter says. It says, I was approached by an outside source to go into a business venture that would take place at KYTC DDL office. That's a Kentucky Transportation Cabinet Division of Driver's License Office. Someone will have birth certificates, social security cards, statements, and bills that are made to look legitimate. They will come into the office with a fast pass and go straight to the individual desk without being checked in. They'd set up as normal, issue the customer, and scan the documents as normal. They'd pay you directly for the transaction as normal. However, additional payment would be made to the individual for the service. I refused the offer for this business venture. I was advised not a good idea after several inquiries to make a decision. My 3200 was being used as a part of this business venture at several locations, even when not in the office or at my station to issue. Another source has approached me recently and asked if I was still interested in the business venture and advised was not interested, mentioning 2 employees at the NIA, I guess that's like a branch in Louisville, were recently let go under similar suspicion. So this was back on 10/29. She sends this letter. Wanted you to know what it says. Wanted you to know the date on that. Let's go ahead and keep listening.
Kentucky Transportation Cabinet blowing the whistle that workers at the NIA Center licensing branch were selling driver's licenses under the table to people who never took the driver's test.
Undocumented workers.
How did it work? What was going on?
I like how WDRB... I mean, obviously, the fact that they're getting driver's licenses issued without ever having taken a driver's licensing test, and we have no idea if they can drive or not, like, that's a big deal, and that presents a danger. But I love how that's what they went to first. They didn't say issuing driver's licenses to illegal immigrants who they weren't even sure knew how to drive. You could say that. But it's almost like, and you'll see this later on, they bring on somebody else. They're trying to downplay the behavior of like it's still inbred into them that illegal immigrants, they even say this, that illegal immigrants are the victims here. They're in our country illegally. Are you going to sit here and tell me, okay, so they made a decision to come here illegally. They're concerned now about being deported, being punished for the crime they've committed. And so they need to go get this illegal license, and you're going to tell me they're the victim? Well, they didn't, they were being preyed upon as they shelled out $200 for a illegal identification card, illegal driver's license that they knew they didn't deserve. They were just a victim. They weren't the perpetrators of a crime. That's how they're going to try to spin this. So while I appreciate the investigative reporting and I appreciate them digging into this story, what I don't appreciate is the fact that they're almost trying to downplay the illegal immigrant part, even though we all know that's the big problem here. But let's go ahead and keep listening.
The undocumented workers would come into the office in groups. They would provide them either permits or driver's license illegally. So they will bypass without even taking the test.
How much?
$200 a person.
$200 a person. Now, let's real quick for driver's licensing right now. Many people, in order to do their driver's licensing, has 2 options. They can drive hours to a driver's licensing center. And granted, this is probably the worst case. I'm sure there's people out there that live right next door to a rural driver's licensing center, and to them this is a really easy process because nobody's ever there. But they can drive 2 hours sometimes to a driver's licensing center and wait in line for several hours to drive 2 hours back. So they take an entire day off work. Take an entire day, they wait in line, they have to take an eye exam, or they have to pay for one and bring it themselves. They can't renew online unless they want to pay for the eye exam. So they have to wait in line. The other option is, if you don't want to wait in line, you can do the quote-unquote fast pass, which is where you get I believe it's where you've set an appointment for yourself. And in order to do that, you have to get an appointment before they're all filled up. Many times they're fully booked out. And so you have to wake up every day at like 6 a.m. and refresh that page and hopefully grab a date for, I think, 3 weeks out, because you can only schedule, I believe, 3 weeks out at a time. And so you have to go on every day, refresh, and hope you can get an appointment for 3 weeks out. Want to get a CDL? Good luck. Want to get a motorcycles permit? Good luck. Now, there's a lot of legal citizens that otherwise have done everything correctly that would gladly pay $200 to get to the front of the line. In fact, this could have been an entire program, potentially. It could have helped Bashir balance the budget even more or help him do more stuff, bring in more revenues. Hey, we've got this new idea. You can go through the normal process, or you can pay $200 front of the line and we'll waive the eye exam. Then people who actually deserve to get a license, just renewing their license, they would actually probably pay it too. I'm more upset it was never offered to me. I'm not. I'm upset that illegal immigrants who don't know how to drive got driver's licenses more than I was not offered to be able to bribe the office worker $200 to skip the line, but you get the point. If they went down the line and started being like $200, skip, $200, they would probably have several takers. Honestly, I'm offended it's so low. I feel like the value, if I'm willing to pay $200 to skip the line, they were selling themselves short. They should have been selling these licenses at like $500 a pop. I think the market could have handled it. I think they would have gotten it. Well, it looks like we're not going to have time to cover a whole lot of other stories because I want to make sure I finish this up, and I've got one more segment left today on the show. So we will go ahead and cover this. Keep digging into this story after this short break. You're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show. And you're back here on this final segment of the Andrew Cooperrider Show, digging into the original WDRB story that went over this illegal driver's licensing scam. I know you've heard everybody talking about it, everybody digging into it, but hopefully you're getting some new thoughts on it, getting some new background, getting maybe some new information. Let's pick back up where we were. We just left off. They hit us with the money shot, $200 a person, as I made the argument for in the last segment. That was too low. They could have done better. There was more of a market out there. Like I said, if people who could legally get licenses were willing to pay $200 to skip the line, they could have amped it up to like $500. I think the market could have bared it. But anyways, getting back to it, let's keep listening.
5 times a day, she says.
Was this an everyday thing?
Almost, yes.
I first reported on the driver's license fraud investigation in April after getting my hands on one of the state's revocation letters. We learned the transportation cabinet sent more than 1,500 of them in 5 months, telling drivers their license was issued in error and must be returned or they could be criminally charged. At the time, state officials confirmed at least 2 terminations, and ongoing state and federal investigations focused on the NIA Center in West Louisville and the E-Town license branch. But they denied all of our records requests, withholding 2,300 documents on the fraud. Mormon's story fills in the blanks.
I found out it may have been going on for a couple of years before it was found out.
We're told it wasn't as simple as people getting state-issued driver's license or permits without taking the test. She says 2 of her colleagues at the NIA Center approached her with a business venture, asking if she wanted to get in on the scheme.
I was asked to...
If your coworkers approach you saying, hey, we have a business venture you might want to get in on at work, like they're approaching you at work, they both have the same lousy job you do. I'm just kidding. Not all of you have lousy jobs, I'm sure. But you all have the same job. And they come up to you and they're like, look, we have a business venture. And they use that term, business. They're not like, hey, I've got a business opportunity. Hey, I want to open up a business. Let me tell you about it. Is this something you might be interested in? If they come up to you and they're like, we got a business venture for you. 9 times out of 10, they're asking you to do something illegal. Just walk away before you even hear about it. Before you're tempted by the devil's words, just walk away. I guarantee you, it is most likely an illegal activity they're trying to get you to business venture into. But we continue.
To bring certain customers in, and they are brought in to me without signing in. And you would scan their documents as usual.
Documents made to look legitimate, like birth certificates and social security cards, according to the letter she wrote to the state. But a key to pulling off this scheme was making sure the required Homeland Security screening was never run.
I start getting these emails saying, are you doing this? Are you doing this? Are you doing this?
And that's where it unraveled. She says those workers were using her login, a password she says her bosses made her share, as all workers at the driver's license branch did not have their own. And Mormon was training to be a supervisor.
I'm not even.
Well, that's how you know there's a problem. That's the kind of thing that you think, like, people would be made aware of. Like, hey, everybody's got to have their own login. We need to be able to track what everybody's doing. You can't be using someone else's login. You can't be handing out your passwords. That's like basic computer security. But anyways.
Even at my desk, because I'm doing various duties or I'm not there for the day. So, things start kind of coming together. I'm like, what's going on?
Was it always undocumented workers?
Yes.
Every time?
Every time.
It does not surprise me.
Adrian Trivedi helps people trying to obtain legal status, an immigration attorney for 14 years.
For those immigrants that don't have a pathway to obtain legal status, having a driver's license could mean the difference between getting home from work safely to their children, to their wives or husbands.
Having a gun to rob somebody might be the difference between being able to buy new rims for your whip or not. That doesn't make it okay. I hope she understands that, but of course she, always the apologist.
And not for a relatively small price.
See, she agrees. Relatively small price. She agrees they could have gotten more cheddar. I'm telling you, they really sold themselves short. Honestly, they clearly weren't very good business people. We're all agreeing that it's not enough money. You're not asking for enough money.
To be able to have that chance of avoiding deportation, even just for that day, they're willing to take it.
To Mormon, this license scheme exploited people.
I didn't want no parts of it.
Mormon says she wrote this letter with her boss on October 29th, and she spoke to detectives 3 months later. She was fired the same day.
Gut punch, yes. Very hard gut punch.
She was 2 years and 3 months onto the job, but she didn't technically work for the state. Mormon was a contractor for Quantum, a staffing agency that Kentucky hired to help fill positions in driver's license branches when they took licensing away from the county clerks.
Please record your
Okay, real quick. So they hired Quantum to help them hire and find people. Okay. This woman had been working there for 2.5 years, and she wasn't even an employee of the state yet. They're going to come up here in a second. They're going to ask about what Bashir knows and doesn't know. But I want you to remember this thing about Quantum. And remember, you've got this woman who's been working there 2.5 years, not even an actual employee yet of the state. Training to be a supervisor while still technically employed by a staffing agency. At what point does the state say, hey, we're going to hire them on? We're going to stop paying the staffing? Because remember, the way staffing agency works, you pay a percentage of their payroll. So if I'm paying somebody, let's say $20 an hour through a staffing agency, I'm really paying like $25 an hour, and the $5 an hour the staffing agency is raking off the top for providing the employee. And the state just doesn't hire these people and doesn't come in agreement. They don't find their own people in this amount of time. Anyways, keep listening. Keep listening. Don't have much longer. Just keep listening.
message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up.
Mr. Van Staten, this is Gilbert Coursey from WDRB News.
The Michigan-based company did not return our calls or emails.
It hung up.
It's shocking. Why would an employer punish and take retribution on an employee that reported this wrongdoing?
Mormon story, now the heart of a whistleblower lawsuit going after both the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet.
She should be a hero.
And Quantum Solutions.
There's a failure to supervise these employees. There were obviously no checks and balances.
Kentucky State Police is on it. There are serious concerns, and we'll hold anybody accountable if they violated the law.
That's basically all Governor Andy Beshear would say as we pressed on this case in April. But there was a part of our interview that didn't make our prior report, and it may be important now.
Is there an immigration component to this?
Not that I'm aware of.
WDRB is fighting in court for the paper trail to be made public, uncovering who knew what and when.
So there you go. Now, let's go to this Beshear element. A lot of people talking about Beshear, they're asking, what did he know and when? Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think Beshear, he may have known about it. Of course, when he found out about it, and he probably has known about it for a while, he's like, oh my gosh, we got to sweep this under the rug. Sweep it under the rug. This is so embarrassing. Sweep it under the rug. But was Beshear actively putting in place the policies? I don't think so, because this is what happens when you go to a staffing agency to hire a bunch of, honestly, have any of you gone to these licensing offices? There's a whole lot of foreigners working there where English is clearly not their second language. I'm not saying foreigners can't work per se. I'm just saying that this is clearly, English clearly isn't their first language. Okay? So of course, when somebody comes in that's also an immigrant like they are, but they're just illegal, they feel bad for them, and they're going to cook up this scheme. And they don't even work for the state, and you're sharing around logins. Of course, you're providing all kinds of opportunities for these kinds of things. This is, of course, what's going to happen. Put the driver's license back in the counties where they know each other, where all the workers know each other, where they know these people coming in most of these counties. Sure, Lexington, Louisville, you're still going to have craziness going on, but in most of these communities, they're going to want to do the right thing. And granted, they're probably not going to need a staffing agency either. Well, y'all, that's what we got time for today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. I thank you all so much for joining me. We'll see you back here next week. Have a great rest of your day.